Today I want to spend some time talking about some of the ways that I use PixInsight for managing the work that I do to make things a little easier for me, um, to also capture things that I do on a particular project or a set of images that I might want to take advantage of in another project or even in another completely different set of images. To do that, I want to talk about a couple of things and touch on some fundamentals that probably most of you know and use, but to keep the video complete and correct, I'll start from some of the simple things and work up to how I use some of the features of PixInsight to manage my projects and my work. So I want to talk about process icon instances and how they're fundamental to this. I want to talk about a specific type of process called the process container, and I want to show how I use that, or how you can use that, and how I use it in my work. And what I specifically use it for is to do two things: to build templates of processes that I want to run for various aspects of the imaging processing steps. I also then use them to save what I actually did on an image so that I can recall it later. And the last two things that I want to talk about, one is the History Explorer and how I use that and how that ties together with the process container icon and instances that we'll talk about. And then lastly, how I kind of save my projects and the different flavors of things that I save so that I can, again, have flexibility. So let's start with process icons. And this should be a fairly familiar concept for most people. If you're using PixInsight, it's hard to use it without understanding processes. They're all listed here, so let's just pick one. Let's pick channel combination. And you know you run it and you know the triangle, and we drag it to the desktop, and we've created an icon instance on the desktop that represents that particular instance that we ran. And if we change things here on the one that's active and we double click on this one, we get back to where we were. Same thing if I change settings here and I want to remember those in this instance, I drag over it and it allows me to overwrite it, and we'll show that again it saves that instance. The other thing that is doable with process icons is to, let's create a couple more here before we move forward. Let's just do deconvolution. Let's add a convolution, and we'll just put that on the desktop as is. All right. So the other thing that PixInsight allows for you to do is to do two things with icons. You can save selected icons, which is typically what I do, or it also will allow you to, well, let's see if we can get there. Sorry. Save. I can save process icons. I don't typically use this, but what this would do would be it would allow you to save a separate file with all of the process icons that are active in this instance of PixInsight. That would be across not only this workspace, but all the other workspaces that are open. Again, I don't typically use that. What I will do is say I want to save these two as a group. I would do save selected icons, which would then bring it up in, and I would be able to type in, my process icons, and I'll just do that. So now I can recall them. So let's just get rid of these guys, and now I can do, I can bring them back. Again, under the process icon menu, there are two things that allow you to bring them back. One is load process icons, and the other is merge process icons. This is where you need to be careful. If I chose load process icons here, and let's say I had a lot of other process icons active in this project across all my workspaces, as soon as I did load process icons and I went through the process, if I did this, I'm not going to, it would load the process icons that I specify, say these, and it would load them, but what it will also do is delete all of the other icons on my project. Again, probably not something you normally want to do. So what I always do is do merge process icons, which will load the ones that you specify and preserve all of the other ones that are on your desktop. Now, if there's, and there is a potential for this, name clashes between how you name your process icons, between what you load from a file and what's on the desktop, PixInsight will handle that. It will append the incoming name that has a conflict with a 1 or another number or some unique number that would make that name unique and not overwrite existing icons of the same name. So let's open these back up, and there they are. And the way PixInsight behaves here too is if I saved this set of icons on this workspace, which happens to be workspace 0, or I'm sorry, workspace 2, when I load them back, it will put them on workspace 02. If you happen to be in a project that doesn't have a workspace named workspace 02, it will create a new workspace named 02 and put it on there. I will show later a way to get around that. It's kind of a kludge. It's one of the things that if I were to improve PixInsight, maybe I would improve that functionality a little bit to allow me to specify when I load or merge these icons, if I could specify a workspace to load them to. I think that would be a nice feature. Anyways, I'll show later how you can at least change that if you need to. All right, so that's fundamentally all we need to understand about process icons and managing and manipulating them. So I'll keep these here actually because we'll use them. Let's do this. So the next thing I want to talk about is a specific process that I find handy, and it is called the process container. Excuse me, let me bring that back up. If you're not using this, it's something you might want to look into and take advantage of its power. So let's bring one up, and let me clear this. So this is what it is. It's an empty shell, and what it allows for is to actually put instances of things in there, and I can keep a list of things that I've done or want to do. And in the windows, you'll see the actual settings that are behind each thing. So in this case, there were no settings in this instance that I put in of channel combination, so they're empty. It's identical to if I did over here and I did edit instance source code, I would see the same thing here that I saw here. So it shows you all of the components of the actual price ups icon. It shows you the code. Unfortunately, it does not show the name. If I change the name of this to my channel combination, sorry, okay. And let's delete. I'm showing you how to delete and how to put things back in. So if I drag it here, it goes to the bottom. If I want to replace it, I have to be a little cautious. So if I go here, I can get it to the top. And again, I can move things around up and down. But as you see, the name of this out here has no bearing or reflection inside the process container, which, again, not necessarily bad. It would be nice if it could display it here. And we'll talk about some of these other columns later when we get to it a little bit more advanced on the process container. So the other thing in common, if I use this feature of the process icon from a desktop perspective, and I put in some text, right? And let's see if I put it over here. I'm just going to add another one, right? So you see that text shows up here, and this one I didn't have it. So there again, same thing. I can edit this description from here and some more. Oops. Let's try that again, and some more, and commit. All right, so now if I drag this out, which again I can do, you'll see that is along with it, right? So again, convenient little shell that allows me to, you know, group things and do some things. And we'll get some more topics on this in a little bit. Now, it's a process. It has a blue triangle. I can drag it to the desktop, treat it like any other icon, right? So now I go away and there it is, okay? Also, it's also neat that I can get recursive. I can add a process container to a process container, and it's got more steps, and you see it's indented. I can, again, move things out of this process container or up and down. It all works as expected. So now I've made changes to this process container. So let's just say I make the mistake and I make the rookie mistake. I'm done. I go away. Okay, I'm good. And then I come back. Oh, it's gone. So again, changes to the process container are like any other process. You change a setting and you want to preserve it, you have to drag it to the icon and save it. And now if I close it and open it back up, I have everything as before. So that's a process container. Again, the same principles apply. So if I did, you know, that save selected icons and saved it as a, you know, my process icon set, then it will be there just like the other ones. So again, for completeness, let's delete this guy. Oops, sorry. Let's delete these two. Now let's do process icons merge. My process icons, and there they all are. Okay. All right. So that's basically that. So now, what I want to go on to next is, since I can build these process containers of groupings or many processes, then how do I use them in my workflow? Well, the first thing that I use them for is I create templates that have steps of the things that I want to do. So traditionally, or maybe not traditionally, but certainly one way that we've all seen is, you know, you have a listing of process icons over here on the right, and that's your workflow. And again, you've all maybe even done the save all those to a process a set of processes to a XPSM, I think it is, or whatever the postfix is, but and then you load it or you use it, right? Effectively, I do the same thing, but instead of having them individually here, I put those within a set of process containers to just makes it look cleaner to me, and it also lets me do some things to have some more control and flexibility about how I use them. So I'm going to shut this down and close this, and now I'm going to move to another workspace that has a real project where I've done some things, and we'll talk about some more of the advanced concepts. So let's switch over here to the workspace one. All right. So this is an actual project where I've completed it, and here are all my images and my final image. Here's my actual workflow of things that I've done for this project in process containers. But before I go to those, I want to show you how I started. And I intentionally got rid of some stuff here so you can see the steps. So as we discussed before, I built some template process containers, and I also created some template process icons that I use to do my complete narrowband image processing workflow. And this is a narrowband image that I processed. So what I would have started in this project is I would have done, I would have probably started with a fresh project or even an existing project, but it doesn't matter, fresh project. And I would have loaded this set of icons. Now, again, if it's a new project, I would do load because there are no other icons on the desktop. But in this case, since this is an existing project, I'm going to do merge to get these back in. So I have a couple of examples that I'm currently using for my narrowband imaging process. You can see here there's 4 narrowband. These are process icons that have been saved. I've got one called NB integration. I have one called NB nonlinear. I have one called NB process, and I have one called NB workflow. So I'm going to load the NB workflow, which is basically the previous 3 saved together. And the reason I save these individually is if I need to, most importantly, pull up my narrowband processing set of icons into a project, I can do that. versus pulling everything from integration to stretching to processing. But in this case, I'm going to load everything so you can see my kind of my template. So I'm going to open those. All right, and there they are. So this is my complete workflow template that I've built. And the first step is I'm going to integrate some data, and I've got a template that I would use for all 3 channels. And that's what you see down here. These are actuals for this image that were built using that template as a starting point. So, and we'll look at each one individually in a second. And then I would do my, once my channels are all integrated and stacked, I would align them and I would crop them. Those are just standard icons. There's no process there or process container there, just straightforward. And then the next thing I would do is take all of those channels nonlinear, and that's what this template allows me to do. I have a template that can allow me to create, after I've got some, either before or after, depending, and I've done it both ways, but to create a synthetic luminance channel from the narrowband. This is a template that allows me to build that process. At this point, my 3 or 4, if I have a luminance, would all be nonlinear, and then I would do some linear fitting to bring them all in line before I combine them, which are these steps allow me to do it either with the LRGB combination, or I can do some pixel math. The other step I might use here that doesn't get represented would be the show AIP combined script, which if you're doing narrowband you probably use, but I don't need to put that there. I just know it exists. And then where the rubber meets the road, this is my template that has all of the steps that I might go through to do a SHO combine or any really kind of narrowband combine, and we'll look at that in a second. So that's what I will start with, and let's look at this guy. So again, I put in here the steps. I'm going to calibrate. I'm going to, this is my subframe selector script. And then once I'm done to those 2 steps and I have my set of selected subs that are passing my selection criteria, I align them, I integrate them, and I finally drizzle them. So one of the concepts, and let's talk about actuals for a second. So I'm going to switch to one of these actuals. So again, what I did was I would have brought up the template and I would have opened the image calibration. In this case, it would be empty. I would fill in the files and the settings and whatnot. And then what I would do is I would say, okay, I'm working off the template. These all have meaningless values. I need to get the one that I actually wanted in there. So I would probably, drag this in. And here's one of the drawbacks of this thing that I think another PixInsight improvement would be allowing me to drag this. And again, if I'm holding it over, replace that one versus that. So it doesn't. So I got to figure out the one that needs to be deleted. They're the same in this case, so it doesn't matter. But I would delete the template version to keep the other, and I would keep going through and doing that. I'll show you in a second a way that if that's too cumbersome, there's a quick way to do this, but that would be jumping ahead, and I don't want to do that yet. So let's continue through. So I've got this template. I've went through the steps that I want to go through my integration process, and I save it, and I've memorialized it. Now I have the steps I took along with the actual settings that I used in each of those steps for this particular image. In this case, it's the S2 data. So I want to show one of the other powerful features, I think, of this process container. So I know, because I've done this, that I have gone through calibration, so my calibration data exists. I've done my subframe selection on those, so I've got selected calibrated frames in a directory that I've also done star alignment on, and I've also run the integration, image integration process on them, and I have drizzle files. So let's just say, for sake of argument, that I had lost my S2, which is right here, and it's in a different state than certainly just past stacking. This is actually all the way through linear and linear fitting. But let's just say that I forgot, or I lost that file and I wanted to get it back. I can disable steps in this script, and now whether they're disabled or not doesn't matter. Anything that's got a green check is active. So again, this is a process. So you notice down here I've got a triangle, I've got a square, and I've got a circle. So it can be executed. So if I click this button, it's actually executing the active things in this script right now. So what I'm going to end up with here is a drizzle integrated version of the S2. and you can see that it's running here. So this is a powerful thing that if, again, you can, in one shot, apply multiple steps. And again, it's not always possible. There's a lot of complexities in that, especially if you have to have masks available and stuff like that. But nonetheless, it still allows you to can things together and run it as one atomic operation, which I think is very powerful. So as soon as this finishes, we'll move on to the next step. Just a couple more images here. All right, so there again, so I've got my drizzled image. And again, if I had left, let's say, this one disabled, it would have done image integration, and then it would have done drizzle integration. So very powerful. Again, if I made changes to this and I wanted to keep those, I would, bring it back over here and drag it over and let it go, but I'm not going to, because obviously I don't want to save that over mine. So I use this template to do these three, and if you look at the entries in this template, and we'll click on one of these, again, they don't change. They're the same from what processes I ran. But if I did do something slightly different from my standard template, then I would have that preserved here as part of my actual for this project. All right, so that's that template. I would have done these, and I've done the other templates, and we can look at nonlinear. That's what all these represent. So here's an actual nonlinear process set of steps. Here's my template. Again, it's slightly different. You can see in my template, I'm allowing them to either do ABE or DBE as the gradient correction initially. This is another interesting one I should mention, this no-op. I think there's other intentions for this thing. However, I use it as a drop it in and add a comment about something to do, right? So here, I've added a comment that says duplicate background gradient corrected image, because what I'm going to do is then use that to create a linear noise reduction mask. So my template says, do a screen transfer on the duplicate, drag that to the histogram, bar, apply the histogram stretch to the duplicate, and now I'm going to use that as a mask to do my linear noise reduction. And then I've got mask and histogram stretch. And again, I may or may not do both of these when I stretch. Sometimes I do one, sometimes I do the other, and sometimes I do both. But that's my template. Here, in this case, whoops, sorry, let me click the right one. In this case, I only, it looks like I may have only done no, I did do both. So in this case, I mass stretched, and then I did I cloned it and did a screen transfer, full screen transfer stretch on that, and then I applied it at 2575. Did a little clipping, and here's my linear fit and curve transformation, which would really come from this template. But anyways, that's how I remember. That's how I know where to start given an event, whether it's stretching or taking a nonlinear or processing, and then so the other one I want to show, I guess. So here again, linear fit. Just does my linear fit, my little curve adjustment, and I do that in one shot. So again, I could drag this to an image and have that done, in one shot. Let's get rid of that. Okay, so here's my big template. Oh, well, before I go there, these are just two little utilities that I want to have around. So generally a star mask setting that works well for me that I just keep. So whenever I get ready to create the star mask, I have it. This is a pixel mask script that I use to create nebula masks. So they're just kind of there for convenience. And you could have whatever else you wanted, obviously, as well. But that's just for me. So I've got my, I've used my templates to create my integration of the images and save what I did there. I've used my nonlinear template to create my 3 nonlinear channels and save what I did for those here. I do, in this case, I created a luminance. Again, I have a template for creating a luminance. Again, I may or may not do all of these steps as I do it, but they're there for reference. And again, I think in this case I did it slightly different, but nonetheless, I had a starting point. Here's my actual luminance processing. So I created a duplicate of the AHA image just after I did DBE on it. And then I went through and did my, nonlinear work, and then I did some cleanup. Or actually, what I did here, excuse me, is I applied a duplicate that I created and did some LHE, local histogram equalization on. Anyways, you get the idea. So these process icons just represent the work that I did to create my various masks along the way. So again, I've preserved them for future use. So let's talk about this guy. So here's my preferred or things that I like to potentially entertain when I'm doing my I've combined my images and I want to process them. So again, I've kind of grouped things by what I want to do. So and I've used the snow op again to kind of hold them. And I'm not going to show it in this tutorial because it's fairly advanced, but I cheated to get these things like that in there. And maybe that'll be part of an advanced tutorial, but nonetheless, you don't need them to make this work. I figured out how to edit the JavaScript to make the mask look like a comment. But and again, if I were ever to try to execute this process container without that disabled, it would freak out because it wouldn't know that mask at all. Anyways, so I always do background correction, neutralization. Sorry. Then I might do some color correction with these options on the stars. And this is a script to help me get rid of magenta stars. This is getting rid of green. Here's the color mask script things, my color enhancement approaches, various, and you get the idea. So I've saved that as a template. So this is the actual set of steps that I went through post combination of the 3 narrowband and the luminance channels and the actual settings that I used to create this image here. So this is where I think the power of PixInsight and process containers really helps me out. So let's talk about the History Explorer. So you've all probably used the undo and the redo. If you haven't found the History Explorer behind that, then I strongly suggest you do. It is a really, really handy thing. Now, here it is, and if it's not there, I think you can basically get it there by going to View, Process Windows, and I think it's probably load that window, and it'll show up here, and then it'll be there forever. But what you should notice right out of the gate is looks a lot like a process container. And as a matter of fact, let me do this so that will make it stick so it doesn't go away. You can drag and resize it like you can in some of the other windows as well up here. So it turns out it is a process container. So the options you have is when I created this one, I could keep a running empty process container going as I do things and manipulate my image. The other thing that I find is a dream is this little guy right here, which I can't get to, that little guy right there. It's kind of tucked in there and hidden, but what you can do is, guess what? Drag it to the desktop, and now you have a process container that has all of the stuff that was done to the image that you just pulled it from. And again, the History Explorer allows you to look at any image that you have open. So if I go to my H, there's what I did on my H to date. And again, just like you can use these buttons to walk back in the history. Let me bring up this guy again. You just watch. If I go back, the arrow here goes up 1. Right? Well, I can also do this. I can take it all the way back to the beginning by just clicking in that column, and now my image is back to what it was right after I combined it. So I find this very powerful, and it's actually very usable. So again, you can save the state to the desktop. You can manipulate the history of the image by clicking here. So I find it useful in times where I've gone all the way to the end and I'm looking at my final image and I'm like, I didn't see that artifact and where did that come from? And now I can walk back through the stack and just figure out where it got introduced. So let's just say I got introduced here. And I wanted to fix that. So how do I fix that? But I want to remember all this other stuff that I did because I don't want to do that differently. Well, if I were to take this image, and actually let's create an example. I want to show you because this is I think the power of it. So I'm going to duplicate this image. Let's do this. All right, so let's go look at the clone. So when you see when I duplicate the image, I lose, it looks like I lose all the state. And in fact, I do. However, in this case, well, I'll come back to that later. So let's just do something to this image now. So say I'm at the state, I left. So I left here, and this clone is at the state of I did morphological transformation on it. So now let's say that I want to, I've figured out that this curve transformation is really what created my artifact. So I want to do something slightly different. And, I do, let's just say I do a new curve transformation on it. Again, you can drag from the History Explorer an instance of something, and you'll be able to drag it onto an icon, an image, and operate on it. Again, another powerful feature. Okay, so in this case, it probably didn't work so well that I did that, but you get the idea. So now if I look at that image, which is the clone, so I've got that done, but how do I get the rest of the stuff? Well, that's the beauty of process containers. So since I had put the process container for the original image with everything on the desktop, I now have it from where I left off. So now this is where I left off. This is the one I corrected. So now if I wanted to do all of these, this is what I can do. I can disable all these. And I could drag this to this image. And again, this is probably not going to work very well. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to stop it because I think this TGV noise will take about 30 minutes to run. So that would get me everything that I had applied post the suspect process back to my image. Okay. So again, I think that's a powerful feature. I use it a lot where I want to work back in some steps on the image that I'm working on and only change one thing and then go forward. Again, if you don't save the icon to the desktop, and whether you're using the original image or a duplicate, you will not be able to recover the forward steps after you make that correction. By dragging the icon to the desktop, you remember all of the stuff that you did so that you can then come back and reference it. Again, I would be lying if I said I didn't use that 100 times on a project as I'm going through and trying and recorrecting. So let's go back to our image, and again, I have to go back here. So that is the History Explorer and how I use it to get basically most of these created. And I want to show you one little secret that, again, I think is just awesome. So the other thing that I've run into in the past is star masks and other things that I do, whether it's range selections, where I've done them, and the issue is this. So let's say I'm going to actually untag that so it goes in. So if I were to do a range selection on this, let's see, range selection, and so let's just do, let's just say I like that. Okay, so I did it and got my range selection that I'm going to use for something, and then I go off and I do something else, and for some other reason I do some other range selection for some other task, and I create another range mask. All right, so let's just do that one. Looks kind of interesting. I'm not sure what I did there, but let's just assume. All right, so now what I realize is, I want to go back to this one. I'm like, well, what was that setting? Well, I don't know. So let's see the first thing, History Explorer. Right. So let's go there and look at range mask 1. Well, that's not good. It doesn't show me anything, but in actuality, it does. This little triangle right here shows you that. And if I click on that, that's the range selection settings that created that range mask. So that's extremely powerful. Now, this has been a savior to me because A, I wanted to get back to a range mask setting, or more importantly, same thing for a star mask. Same thing here. We look at the star masks. Again, you don't see it, but if you click here, this shows me the star mask settings that I use to create star mask, the star mask image. So beautiful, beautiful, powerful, powerful. Now, there's another thing you need to be aware of. If I were to say, and I think I can get rid of these because I don't need them. So if I take this guy and drag it to the desktop and open it, what you see is, well, I don't have that star mask guy there. So it doesn't drag it from the History Explorer to the desktop, but I do this. I bring it over, put it in, and then I would resave it so that I don't lose that change. And say yes. So now I've got my star mask process, and what I can do, again, now that I have that, preserved, if I want, I can just go like that, and, well, actually I can't do that, sorry, because I realized that that won't work. In this case, it would create, I lost it. I didn't save it correctly. Hold on. Let's try that again. And it still wouldn't work, even though I'm going to redo this for completeness, because it's not going to all work on the star mask. So let me do this first. Yes. Let's just make sure I still got it. Okay, good. So where I was mistaken, if I drag this to that, it'll create a star mask off of this image. But what it will actually do after that is it'll run the 3 histogram stretches on this actual image versus the star mask. So I couldn't do it that way. But whoops, let me get rid of that. But nonetheless, if I wanted to recreate my star mask from this image or another image, I would just drag this here, run it, and when the star mask comes up, then I could either disable that and drag the icon to the star mask, or I could just drag each one of these individually to the star mask to get the same effect. So that is History Explorer and process icons and how I use them to create and preserve the steps with the actual settings on the processes that I ran on that image, and save it to my desktop. So after that, now I want to save this as a project. What I typically do, well, let me talk about some of the downfalls of this. As you're working, or as I'm working on a project, I may save it as a project. And if I have, if I save right now and I save this project, then not only do I save these images in the project data folder, I also, or I should say PixInsight also saves the state and the history of those images in the process folder, which is great. So if you want to close a project, but come back to it and keep all that state preserved so that you can make use of it, that's what a project allows you to do. The downsides I see to that is, especially when you're dealing with some narrowband and my images are rather large, so to save this project could take 10, 15 minutes. To load it could take 10, 15 minutes. Not always ideal, but again, I do it. I don't do it all the time. But what I don't like is if I want to save the project, and what I start with is I save this image as an XISF, save it down, close this image, close all these other images after I've saved them as files to my directory, and then save the project. I all of a sudden lose all the state information and history of this image. I can't recover it once I do that. So the reason I use process icons is I can persist that state forever. And I have two ways I do that, or 2 ways I can do that. So I will finish this project. I will save any of these images that I need to save to preserve them. Generally speaking, I don't. I will save this image as an XSIF and other variations for posting, right? And then I would close all these images. And then if I want to save the project, I'll save the project with these icons. Then when I load the project later, the actual steps I took to create all these images are there, and I can reuse them to recreate the image from scratch or from wherever its starting point was. So that's easily done through the Save project, which we all know and probably use. Now, the other thing that I also like to do is save these or some set of these, and more importantly, probably this one as an icon. So here's an example I have in this Rosette project, which is here. I would save that as an icon set of, in this case, it's a process container, but I'm going to save it as a set of icons. So that now, if there's a particular thing that I did in this process that I liked, and I'm on some other image or something else that I remember, hey, when I did the Rosette, there was this thing I did, and I want to use that technique, and I can't exactly remember how I did it, I can load then on that project, do process icons, merge, and load that process container, and now I've got the workflow I did on a different image in a different project now in using it. I love that feature because this is, for me, an evolving process. And I think the template has the high-level steps that I like to keep and have access to. I also, on other projects, like to have access to actual usages of some of these techniques with the settings that I may have used to achieve a specific effect, and then make use of it on other projects. But I don't need to put those settings back in my template because, again, you know, every image is different. Everything is different. So I've got access to technique and access to technique with specific settings or even variations across projects that I can use in any project I want. So to me, that is the most powerful feature. So make no mistake, it doesn't mean I do not use projects. I use project, I save a project. I just like to save a project with the bare minimum, which is this, so I don't have a bunch of images that are open. Unless I'm in the middle of working on it, I might save it. But for time's sake, if I want to come back later after I've finished an image, I don't want to wait for the project to load all the images. Plus, I don't want all this data hanging around my data project folder for that project because it consumes space, and I want to have more images. So that's how I use instance icons, the process container, and the history explorer to kind of manage my starting point and my end point, and then again preserve my end state of how I got to the end point, so that I can come back later, because I know, as we all hope to probably do, is I'm going to learn something even better about how to process images. And when I come back to do a reprocess, I've got a starting point of what got me to this state, and then it will help me figure out where in that process I need to kind of do this new thing I've learned, or how to adjust it. So that's that. I wanted to cover one more thing that's an advanced topic before you leave, and that is one thing to note out, and I think we talked about it in the beginning, but if I do, or when I did the save selected icons earlier, and I created that XPSM, I was on workspace 0. So again, if I were to go into another project and create 10 workspaces and rename workspace 10 to rename workspace 10 to Brad, and on that workspace do, process icons, merge icons, and load these icons, they would not show up on workspace 10, or actually workspace Brad, which I renamed to 10 to. It would show up on workspace 0. And again, that's a little bit annoying to me. So I'm not suggesting that you do this for every set of icons you save as for future use. However, on this one, I did something such that it will show up on whatever workspace I'm on when I merge it. And to do that, it requires a little bit of advanced work. It may be advanced. It may not be advanced. I don't want to pick on anybody's abilities. So if you go to the directory where you saved this set of icons, so in this case, I have a specific folder that I saved some of my template process icons in, and some of these are old, and I've probably got to clean them up, but you can see I stole some light vortex stuff and kind of canned it so I could come back to it. I used to have some other ones in here, but nonetheless, so this set I saved as my NB workflow. So how do I get those such that they don't show up on the workspace they were saved from and wherever they were saved? So you have to open this file. This is just a text file. So depending on your operating system, you will have to open it with the editor, the text editor of your platform. In this case, for Mac OS X, I use TextEdit. If you're on Windows, it would try to just be, Notepad or something like that. So open it, and again, you'll see it's effectively just an XML file. Now, what you have to do is go all the way to the end, and the last section of the XML will be the icons, what their position is on the desktop, and what workspace they're in. Now, when you save it, what you'll see in here, in this case, if I had saved it from workspace 1, you would see workspace 01, and each one of these would have workspace 01 in it. So what I did is I come in and I just delete that, and then I save it. So fortunately, PixInsight will work in this case where the workspace is empty. It actually will then just place it wherever you did issued the merge or the load command from. So that's a little trick that will clean it up. Now the downside, again, if you alter this and you want to resave it because you've altered it, then you'll have to redo that edit to get it to be workspace agnostic, so to speak. Anyways, that's just a little tip. That would be one thing that I would probably ask PixInsight to change is save selected icons, and then after it asks you, or before, I would say which workspace do you want to associate these with, or maybe none. But anyways, neither here nor there. So hopefully this helps you in some way. There's a lot of little tidbits in here that can be used all together or individually, but nonetheless, hopefully this makes your PixInsight processing experience a little better. Thanks for watching, and have a good day.